Welcome to FOXSOUL's Black Report. This is the space where we bring you Black America's headline news, views, and opinions. I'm Romeo.
Hey there, I'm Brooke.
I'm Demi.
Peace and blessings, I'm Nielle.
All right, coming up on today's show, a divided Supreme Court considering the most restrictive abortion law in the country. Also on Capitol Hill, the Congressional Black Caucus is optimistic about a vote on the Build Back Better plan. And in Compton, we have to tell you about a horrifying story. A horrifying story. An associate pastor of a local church is shot to death. Dr. Michael Fisher is here with us to discuss what the faith community is doing about this crime, just giving us a feel on things right now in the area. Plus, we do have an update on important elections happening tomorrow.
Also, potential jurors see racism behind Ahmaud Arbery's slaying. Derek Chauvin jurors speak out for the very first time. Twitter reacts to Colin Kaepernick comparing the NFL recruitment to slavery. And Jay-Z and LL Cool J are welcome into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
We have that and so much more. You know why? Because it's our voice and our truth. So let's talk about it.
Hey, Soulmates, thank you for joining us this Monday evening. I hope you're having a great one. Let's get to our top story. A sharply divided Supreme Court set today to once again consider the Texas law that all but bans abortion around 6 weeks of pregnancy. This has, of course, reignited a debate about the most restrictive law in the country. According to CNN, oral arguments come 2 months to the day after a 5-4 court allowed the law to go into effect, which again stopped most abortions in what is the country's second largest state, flooding clinics in nearby states with patients from Texas. There's been a nationwide firestorm. The Supreme Court has agreed to fast track 2 appeals brought by a coalition of abortion providers and the Biden administration. This has signaled for one of the first times throughout this that the justices may understand the case to be one of the most urgent the court has considered under Chief Justice John Roberts. And so the biggest discussion is that we're seeing today is that 2 key conservative justices seem to be on board with hearing this out, with changing their mind, with opening things up when we're talking about Justices Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh. And they have appeared to, according to the LA Times, say that the state may have gone too far, specifically on 2 points, adopting an unconstitutional limit on abortions and effectively preventing doctors and clinic owners from challenging it in court, because the enforcement is the, some say creative, some say tricky, some say downright unconstitutional, but the enforcement of this law is actually where the power is, because as you know, people have the right to sue. Any Jim Joe Bob has the right to sue essentially anyone that can be proved to have helped in any way a woman go receive that aspect of reproductive health care. And that is what either makes this, unoverturnable or downright problematic, and we're going to have to see how that happens there.
Brooke, I love the way that you explained that because the LA Times article did outline everything that is needed to know. One thing I just want to add in here, that's why people around the world need to make sure that you are tuned into this regardless of where you live, because if this actually goes through, it could be a domino effect for different states around the world. And I also really like that it seems as though, because at first it was just seeming like nobody was on our side here, our side meaning the people that are like women should have the own right to do whatever they want to with their body. So it also makes me feel like, okay, great. You're kind of coming around and having a moral compass here and understanding what's at stake, that this could be far more than just abortion. So many more things could be at risk if this goes all the way through. So make sure you, wherever you live, you stay tuned to see what's going on with this, because this could also affect your state in coming years or months.
All right, yeah, this is really important, and we know right now in the state of Texas that abortions are down 40 to 50%, and that pretty much impacts people of color and low-income communities. And so all eyes are right now on the Supreme Court, because this is going to impact our nation, and we want to know, how they're going to rule. And this also brings up the conversation of should you add more justices to the Supreme Court, because it's conservatively held right now, and it's going to be interesting how all this unfolds.
It definitely is. And like you said, with this going on in Texas, it's affecting clinics right there in Louisiana, in Oklahoma, how they're being overcrowded now, which could bring a health scare or a health risk to a situation for someone that's going across or out of state lines just to get this taken care of. So it's an ongoing problem that can not only just happen in Texas and states around it, but all across the country. So we have to keep an eye on it.
We continue.
Right, now let's talk about what's happening down the street on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. The $1.75 trillion framework agreement for President Biden's Build Back Better plan represents a significant victory for black lawmakers known as the Congressional Black Caucus, who have been adamant that promises made to black communities be kept by the White House, according to the Hill. Now, the framework included key priorities of the Congressional Black Caucus, including historically black colleges and universities, and increased child care tax credit, affordable housing, universal child care, and pre-K and Medicare expansion. Now, CBC Chairwoman Joyce Beatty, in remarks before Friday's unveiling of the framework, suggested Biden knew he needed to deliver for the CBC, which has been disappointed at the lack of progress on key issues such as voting rights and police reform. Now, we know that Sinema and Manchin, who are big Democrats that are holding up a lot of the policies that a lot of Americans want to see move forward, they are in agreement with this. And Derek Johnson said that it's off to a good start and he's in agreement. But we know that the key factor is, even if we get all Democrats on the same page, we know that we're looking at the Republican Party, who is likely to bring it all down. And we know that this bill, the Build Back American plan, is coupled with the infrastructure bill, and they go hand in hand, just like the For the People Act and the John Lewis Act went hand in hand. And we see where those two bills are. They're still sitting on the desk collecting dust. So it'll be interesting to see, as the Democrats push this through, how the Republicans respond.
Yeah, because at this point, this appears to be no bit of a victory whatsoever for anyone.
Exactly.
Until we see this vote come Tuesday. And because, we've seen this talk. Think back when we were talking about police reform. It was like, hey, wait a minute, we're going to drop qualified immunity, but trust us, it's going to go somewhere.
Yeah, it may not.
We're still, so.
It's a waiting game. At the end of the day, I feel like, all these promises that were made, right? We understand how powerful the black vote was for election 2020. The people of color out there getting in line, making sure their vote counted. So if things can't get pushed through and all these promises do get broken, how does that look moving towards the midterms and for the next election? And on top of that, if all the Democrats do get on the same page and the Republicans don't agree or try to block it to whatever happens in that situation, then can we still be upset with the Democrats? But sometimes I feel like they can't even be on the same page with this, and that's the problem.
Listen, arguably, this you say, how does this look going into the midterms? Arguably, really, really bad. And I think that's like one of the overarching questions that I just have, just as someone sitting back and watching this all unfold. And so, where Sinema and Manchin stand, even so much coming in, right? And so I wonder, and I feel like I may have said this on the show before, but I do wonder if there was a way for us to get to the point that we are now, knowing what we know about them, knowing what we know about other Republicans and the Dems knowing this, if there was a way for them to get to the point they are now without such a high level of political damage. Because that's the part that looks bad. It looks like, hey, the Democrats aren't on board. The Democrats can't get anything done. We're going to go back. It looks like Republicans and Manchin are controlling things. And what is so confusing about it is that everyone kind of knew where everyone stood from the very beginning. And so was there a way to not make this be so politically harmful?
Well, the way would be the filibuster, right? If we look, the key word in all of these conversations, from voting rights to police reform to the infrastructure bill and the Buy Back American plan, the key word is the filibuster, and it's something that President Biden is not really ready to move forward. He's alluded to the fact that possibly, maybe, but until the filibuster changes, I think everything is going to be stalled and held up in Congress.
But so I think maybe I wasn't clear, because obviously, yes, the filibuster would change getting these votes through. But the issue that because you can't even get all of 50 of them to agree on the filibuster. And so the thing is that you knew where at least two of your teammates stood going into all of this, and there's just been a lot of back and forth, and it seems like maybe from the beginning the initial proposal could have been one that Manchin was on board with, so that at least it didn't look so messy getting to the point to where the final proposal is something Manchin is on board with. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I think that
it does make, I just want to respond, it does make sense, but to the point of everything being in Manchin and Sinema's pocket and them being the deciding factor on what moves forward, that's a huge problem within itself. You can go ahead, Demi.
I'll go to the next story. So as Washington turns its attention to Virginia's gubernatorial election this week, lieutenant gubernatorial candidates Hala Ayala and Winsome Sears are looking to make history as the first women to hold the position in the Commonwealth. Ayala and Sears would also become the first Afro-Latina and Black woman, respectively, to hold the second most powerful position in the former capital of the Confederacy. While much of the nation media's attention has been fixed on the tightening polling between gubernatorial candidates, Democratic Terry McAuliffe and Republican Glenn Youngkin, polling between Ayala and Sears has also been very tight. So what's most important to note, of course, of this whole story is that either way that this goes, history will be made. So that's the important piece to add here. But, and of course, this will be the first woman to hold this role. But what I found really interesting is I want to see with this how this is going to play out, because one topic that's very interesting is COVID-19 and the pandemic and vaccines. So Ayala, she's been very outspoken on COVID, making it known how she feels about COVID-19, getting masks and being vaccinated. Winsome Sears, on the other hand, in an interview, she wouldn't let reporters know her vaccination status. She kind of kept that deep to her, closer to her heart. And in a tweet, she says, "I won't disclose my vaccination status. I won't be bullied by the media. They want to distract you from Ayala's support for policies that raise your electricity rates." You know, pretty much letting her know the things that would not affect you positively. And so I'm just really curious to see how COVID-19, because it's a very big topic, how Joe Biden felt on COVID-19, vaccinations, and, you know, wearing masks was a big determining factor for a lot of people wanting to vote for him versus how Trump did things. So I'm just curious to see how this will turn out with, you know, one person kind of for vaccines and one kind of more, you know, not letting people know her decision on vaccines. I want to see if that positively or negatively affects her running her campaign.
Yeah, that's a big question, because at the end of the day, it is your privacy if you don't want to discuss that. But you're on this platform, you may have to be public. And how do y'all feel about that? Do you think it's going to hurt her? I think it probably will hurt her moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, it's your privacy about a public health issue. And we've talked about this all the time, essentially, like, you know, your rights end where mine begin. And so this idea that, you know, you're not open with, you know, we go over and over and talk about vaccines later on in the show. But it seems
I want to add to this. Tomorrow, Soulmates, is a big day for our country when we talk about voting. All eyes are going to be on Virginia. All eyes are going to be on New York. And another key race to watch is in Minneapolis, where we're looking at if they will reimagine their police department and put it in the hands of the people. The voters will decide if they're going to get rid of the police department and reimagine what that looks like. So tomorrow we'll definitely be covering the important elections that are impacting Black America.
We definitely will. All right, former President Trump was spotted performing the controversial Tomahawk Chop at Saturday night's World Series game in Atlanta. In videos posted to Twitter, Trump and former First Lady Melania Trump are seen performing the gesture in an open-air box. Now, the gesture, which has been a tradition at Atlanta Braves games for some time, recently became part of nationwide conversation regarding racism and professional sports symbols, particularly when the team advanced to the World Series. This situation here, you think about after the election, you think about all the drama that went into the state of Georgia, you think about how Major League Baseball moved the All-Star game out of that state, right? Took millions of dollars away from the city because of something that Trump ignited, if you ask me. That's my opinion. I don't even know how he could be allowed into the stadium. You know, they ban fans and stuff all the time, but why is he there?
You know, this has been an interesting conversation that has been happening about this and about the way a lot of Native American people are portrayed when it comes to professional sports. And the argument on one half is like, hey, this represents genocide. This represents harm. This is racist. Right. And the other side says, but it's cool. I like the sports.
Exactly.
And it's interesting that the MLB's commissioner, Rob Manfred, has kind of backed away from this, saying, oh, the Braves like it, things are different in Atlanta, the fans like it, because he did make that controversial decision to move the All-Star game out of the area for another political decision. I wonder how much of his stance on this, you know, not touching the chop, leaving it as it is, I wonder how much of it is because of the backlash and really saying that the MLB chooses not to be political. We made one exception and we don't want to do it anymore. But the answer as to whether this is problematic should go to Native American people who over and over and over again, even in and around Atlanta, have been saying this is harmful. We don't like this. Stop this.
Absolutely, bro. No, I agree with you 1,000% because, Romeo, like you said, this began back in the 1970s. And in 2019, a member of the Cherokee Nation pretty much came up and ignited everything to let everybody know, like you said, this is disrespectful. So I think that the fact that it is considered racist, the fact that members of the Cherokee Nation do feel like this is disrespectful should overpower the sport because you're using something, first off, so the Braves, like you said before, they tried to bring it back. They stopped playing the chant and it was something else that they did. They stopped giving out the foam. The foam, like Tomahawk, or I don't want to make sure I say it correct, but they stopped giving out the foam ones. But still, if the Cherokee, if they feel like this is disrespectful, that should overpower the game. And also, Romeo, back to your point, I feel like Trump can do whatever he wants, but Melania Trump, you can tell she did not at all want to be there at all. Like she was just doing it just because. And it's kind of like, I would love to see her kind of break free and just be herself and do what she wants to do, you know?
The funny part about this is that Donald Trump said he was invited there by the MLB, and the MLB said, we didn't invite him. You know, they didn't say he couldn't come, but he wasn't extending an official invitation. And at the end of the day, you know, Donald Trump can say what he wants, but actions speak louder than words. And he has had a ton of actions that portray racism and the worst things that this country has experienced from Right America.
All right, let's get to our next story here because this is a story that has caused frustration, to say the least. American Airlines canceled another 634 flights Sunday, more than 12% of its total operations for the day. The company told this to CNN. They have now canceled more than 1,500 flights since Friday, dealing with weather issues, what they've called, and staffing shortages. It started last week. Air travel plunged in early 2020. Obviously, airlines offered buyouts and early retirement packages to employees in order to cut costs. So right now they're in this space where they're trying to hire or rehire workers. They're dealing with service disruptions, and that has been more frequent. Lots of weekend plans, lots of vacation plans, early vacation plans were ruined. If you just even touched on social media, people are not happy with American Airlines. And something interesting that even I learned over the weekend, just kind of watching people, a couple internet friends, dealing with this, is that a lot of the employees, when it comes to airlines, are contract employees. So a lot of different aspects of what makes up, you know, people, there are a lot of different people, a lot of different departments that make everything, you know, go smoothly when it comes to your flight, right? A lot of those people are contract employees, and you wonder if they're, you know, the easy reason, and you never really know, but the easy reason, the idea that you have contract employees is because you don't have to pay that many benefits to a certain extent, right? Your benefits and things change from a corporation, but this is a big billion-dollar corporation.
Absolutely.
That has a lot of government help. And so, you know, you wonder what's the reason for that, and then also how that affects what we're seeing now.
Yeah,
so I'm sorry, Romeo.
No, I was going to say, you know, Southwest Airlines had this issue not too long ago, right? What I love to fly. My fear is making sure these planes continue to get service, because if you're falling on employees and things of that nature, is that going to trickle down to that side of it? And that's my fear, making sure these planes are safe.
Yeah, Brooke, I love that you say internet friends, because I have some internet friends as well. This was, like you said, this was all over the weekend. There were some photos that showed at LAX, American Airlines, where the line was wrapped literally just, it felt like miles inside of the airport. But, so there's this insider, which is one of my internet friends, and I'll try to make it quick, who pretty much said that a lot of the airlines were saying, like, we're having weather issues, instead of saying, like, we're having flight attendants that don't want to come in. So there was a flight attendant that showed this long text thread where they were giving the media information on what was going on. And so just, if I could just recap, pretty much what they say is it's an uncoordinated protest of the mandate. And so the flight attendants, they pretty much went on a quiet mandate, but so everyone was showing photos of, so say for example, LAX said we're having weather issues, so we can't go out of your flight. So people were screenshotting like the map, like there's no weather issue. What are you talking about? So then flight attendants started like releasing information, like pretty much letting them know, no, we're going on protest. That's what's going on. They're trying to disguise it as weather issues, but we're really trying to, you know, go on strike. And what's shocking is that if just 2 flight attendants decide to go out, that affects hundreds of people. And so, you know, the American Airlines, they need to get it together, because this is going to affect a lot of money for them.
Yeah.
Well, we know the holiday season is coming up, and so you want to consider how this will impact your travel, because most families and people that travel, they're not prepared to possibly stay a week or days in another city. So that impacts their finances. So this is a really big issue that is happening in our country, and it's all related to the COVID-19 pandemic. And it's just, we have yet to see the ramifications of how COVID-19 is impacting our economy at large.